Imagine for a moment that you're in the shoes of a manufacturing manager, staring at a spreadsheet filled with numbers that are supposed to guide your decisions. You've got to figure out how much it costs to produce each product, right? Seems straightforward enough. But then you realize that those numbers are murkier than a swamp in a summer storm. Welcome to the world of cost allocation in manufacturing, where the evils of misallocation can lead you down a treacherous path known as the death loop. Now, let's break this down. You see, calculating the accurate manufacturing cost for each product isn't just a box to check off on your to-do list. It's the lifeblood of your decision-making process. It affects everything from budgeting to pricing. If you get it wrong, you're not just losing money, you're making decisions based on faulty information that could lead your company to disaster. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this can happen in the blink of an eye. Here's the kicker. A staggering 98% of senior financial executives believe that the cost information they rely on to make business decisions is inaccurate. Let that sink in for a moment. You've got a room full of professionals who all agree that the data is flawed, yet 80% of them are unlikely to do anything about it. Why? It's a classic case of inertia. Change is hard, and sometimes it feels easier to stick with the devil you know than to venture into the unknown. But let's dig deeper. The root of the problem often lies in how we allocate indirect costs. You've got your direct costs, materials, labor, all the tangible stuff. But then you've got indirect costs, which are like the hidden gremlins lurking in the shadows. These are your overhead costs, and the way we allocate them can be incredibly simplistic, leading to a distorted view of what it actually costs to produce a product. Imagine you're running a factory that produces both high-volume and low-volume products. At first, everything seems manageable. You've got a good grip on your overhead, and your margins are healthy. But as time goes on, you start adding more products, some of which fly off the shelves, while others barely make a blip. This is where the death loop begins to take shape. Let's say you introduce a new low-volume product to your lineup. It sounds great in theory, but in practice, it's a nightmare. Your overhead costs don't just magically disappear when you add a new product. They often increase. But your accounting system? It's stuck in the past, unable to allocate those costs accurately between your high and low volume products. So what happens? Your marketing team, armed with flawed data, starts underpricing those low volume products. This leads to even more low volume sales, which only exacerbates the problem. It's a vicious cycle. Now, let's flip the script and consider high volume products. Here, the death loop takes a different form. Because of cost distortions, you might find yourself overpricing these high-volume items. Sure, it seems like a smart move at first. You're maximizing profits, right? But then sales start to dwindle. Customers aren't willing to pay those inflated prices, and soon, your high-volume business is shrinking. The irony? The reduced sales mean that each product has to absorb even more overhead, which just drives costs up further. Your margins are shrinking, and you're left wondering where it all went wrong. It's a classic case of misallocation leading to mismanagement. If you don't reduce your fixed manufacturing overhead in line with your production, you're spreading those costs across more products, each carrying a heavier burden. It's like trying to balance a stack of plates on a wobbly table. Eventually, something's going to crash down. You might be thinking, okay, but what can we do about it? Well, the answer is simple yet complex. We need to change the way we think about cost allocation. It's not just about finding a new formula or a shiny new software system. It's about fundamentally reevaluating how we define our allocation bases. We need to look for drivers that reflect real cause and effect relationships, not just arbitrary numbers that make the accounting department's life easier. This requires courage. It requires stepping out of the comfort zone and challenging the status quo. But here's the thing. The potential for improvement is enormous. By adopting a more nuanced approach to cost allocation, manufacturers can not only enhance their decision-making processes, but also optimize their profits in a way that benefits both the business and its customers. Imagine a world where you're not just reacting to the symptoms of the death loop, but actively working to prevent it. You're making informed decisions based on accurate data, and your product lines are thriving because you've taken the time to understand the true costs associated with each item. It's not just a dream, it's a reality that's within reach if we're willing to put in the effort. But let's not sugarcoat it. Change is hard. It requires buy-in from all levels of the organization, from the executives to the floor managers. It means investing time and resources into understanding the intricacies of your cost allocation methods. It's a daunting task, but the rewards are worth it. You'll find yourself making decisions that are not only better for your bottom line, but also for your customers, who will appreciate the value you provide. So, what's stopping us? Why do we continue to perpetuate systems that lead us into the death loop? It's a question worth pondering. Perhaps it's the fear of change, the comfort of familiarity, or the overwhelming nature of the task at hand. But if we continue to ignore the issue, we're only setting ourselves up for failure. Let's face it, the world of manufacturing is changing rapidly. New technologies, shifting consumer demands, and increasing competition are all factors we can't ignore. To thrive in this environment, we must adapt. We must be willing to reevaluate how we allocate costs and make decisions based on sound, reliable data. In closing, the evils of cost allocation in manufacturing production are real, and they can lead to disastrous consequences if left unchecked. But by acknowledging the problem and taking proactive steps to address it, we can break free from the death loop. It's time to embrace change, invest in better models, and make decisions that reflect the true cost of doing business. After all, the validity of our decisions depends on our perception and understanding of reality. Let's make sure that reality is grounded in truth, not distortion. The future of our manufacturing endeavors depends on it.